which is believed to be the first commercial use of a printer in the US, which I thought, the first commercial use of a computer in the US. Let's talk about how to pass Accenture's interview. What's up guys, it's Mike from Job Ready English, helping you pass the interviews for world famous companies. Today we're going to be talking about Accenture, one of the biggest and best known technology consulting companies in the world. Really excited to put this one together for you. It's been on our mind for a little while, we just needed to finish up the research. If you like what we do, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and drop us a comment down below and let us know what is another company that you would like us to cover in the Pass the Interview video series. So let's start off with a couple of fast facts about Accenture. In 2020, they did over $40 billion in revenue and have over 500,000 staff, which makes them one of the biggest companies in the world.
Oh my God! Wow!
And over 150,000 of those staff are actually based in India. Accenture is famous for providing technology consulting services and actually does so to over 90 of the Fortune 100 companies and over 75% of Fortune 500 companies. Accenture has been based in Dublin, in Ireland, since 2009, which is where its headquarters is. Accenture actually started as the technology consulting division of Arthur Andersen Professional Services, which is a company we're familiar with that actually gave birth to a couple of other professional services companies. So this all came about in the 1950s when they conducted a feasibility study for General Electric to install a computer at Appliance Park in Louisville, Kentucky, which led to GE installing the Univac 1 computer and printer, which is believed to be the first commercial use of a printer in the US, which I thought, the first commercial use of a computer in the US. On January the 1st, 2001, Andersen Consulting changed its name to Accenture, which literally means accent on the future. This was actually part of an internal competition which a Danish employee won, submitting that in the Oslo office from Norway, and ever since then, Andersen Consulting have been known as Accenture. Okay, let's talk about Accenture's interview process. Now, as you can imagine, Accenture has over 500,000 staff, so there are liable to be some changes and discrepancies in terms of their interview process. Now, potentially you could get two different types of processes. You could just get a straight video interview or telephone interview depending upon the role. Or many graduate roles you might actually have some kind of job simulation. I talked about this a lot more, and hopefully this will be upstairs from the KPMG job simulation and the Deloitte job simulation. It's basically where you have lots of different types of questions: numerical, SJT, verbal, logical, alongside video questions and maybe even a case study as well. As you can imagine, with Accenture there is quite a lot of variation, but that's basically what we came back with. We had a little think about how we wanted to approach this for you, and realistically we don't want to move too far away from what we always do, which is essentially we pick out the most common questions that we believe are going to answer and then explain sort of how we would answer them, maybe what we'd say, and also why we would say that. So I think we're pretty much going to stick to that for this video going through. We're going to be working on timings of about 2 minutes to answer and 1 minute to think, because we seem to find that that was a pretty good gauge, and also it's a good sort of foundational benchmark to think about when preparing for interviews when you're not quite sure what the format is going to be. So let's jump into 11 questions that we identified which are most likely to be asked for Accenture. Question number 1, why do you want to work for Accenture? So in the top bar there's going to be a link to the why this company question. We've dealt with this one in great detail. We've also given you a free handout in that video which you can refer to and fill out. So for those of you who are familiar, you know what I'm going to say. I'm going to ask you to pick out 3 to 5 key facts, maybe more, maybe less, depending upon the timings. One thing that I would say, especially for Accenture, is they provide really quite a lot of information. They're a very technologically innovative company, as you can imagine, providing technology consulting services to such a wide range of clients. So they're really the go-to people in terms of innovation in presenting information. They're always on the pulse when it comes to news, putting out white papers. you really should have very little difficulty in trying to pull out some information about Accenture and put together a really compelling why this company. And just remember, when you're pulling out those facts, try to avoid generic answers. Like, even if you said it's a big technology consulting company, you'll notice in the fast facts that I just did, I didn't just say that. I said, look, they provide services to over 90 of the Fortune 100 companies and over 75% of the Fortune 500 companies. I'm providing some data, some statistics. We can really give some colour and also make sure that the information that we're providing is unique and specific and not generic. Question 2, what are your strengths and weaknesses? When thinking about something like this, there's a couple of things to bring up. Number 1, I would just pick one strength and one weakness. Sometimes I'll hear clients give 3 strengths and weaknesses or so on and so forth. Particularly for the weakness, we'll deal with each of one of these in turn. If you're wondering what strength should you pick, well, what's the one that they really emphasize in the job description? Could it be your attention to detail, your ability to innovate, your forward thinking around technology, your application of new software? Whatever it is, you can grab that off of the job description. Make sure that you provide an example as to why that is your biggest strength. For example, what have you done that clearly shows that this is a strength of yours, rather than just saying, I'm good at computers? You could say, well, since the age of 13, I've loved buying parts of computers off of eBay and then putting them together and selling them on in my school. For example, that's just a direct application to clearly demonstrate that you have that skill. For the weakness, what I really like is just something which can be relatively minor. It should be true. So it could just be something like, I have a tendency to rush. Sometimes I have been known to miss deadlines. I find it difficult to ask for help. But this is something that I quite like as just like a little story. Like, for example, it could be when I was doing a project recently, I was really struggling, but I didn't reach out and ask for help. As a result, I missed the deadline. My professor pulled me up on it and said, this really isn't like you. I finally came clean with her and said, look, I'm actually really struggling. I couldn't understand this stuff. She asked me to come into her office. We just had a really good chat, and she said, look, sometimes you've just got to ask for help. You've got other members of your team. It doesn't matter how smart you are. It's just about putting yourself out there. And that's what I've learned, so I'm getting better at asking for help. So I like a weakness with a story, just to show that you know that, and therefore you're learning and growing from that. Question 3, why this role? So again, we'll put a link up in the top below where you can go and we break down this question in depth. Also, don't forget, if you want to know more about more in-depth answers in terms of passing any interview, you can jump down and click the link below for the Pass the Interview free course that we have on Skillshare. So when we're talking about why this role, we really want to talk about 2 things. The first thing is, what would you do? And the second thing is, why are you good for the role? So it's like 60 seconds and 60 seconds. The most common mistake that I tend to see in answers whenever I see them or listen to them is someone will basically say, oh, this is why I'd be great for the job. But when you think about it from an employer's point of view, they really would like somebody who can sort of say, well, I would do ABC, or this would be my 9 to 5, or these are really the 3 most important things for you that I should be able to do. It just shows to the employer that you're paying attention and that you've read the job description. And then in the final 60 seconds, you can basically sit there and kind of pick out maybe the top skills you think that they're looking for. You know, if they're looking for somebody who can code, tell them the languages and tell them how long that you've been doing it for. They're looking for someone with good client-facing skills. Tell them about when you've worked with people. It doesn't have to be in a consulting environment. It's just, you know, working with people is working with people, right? So just looking at that job description, really breaking it down, and always thinking to yourself, what's the most important thing from the employer's point of view, not from my point of view. Question 4, walk me through your resume. Tell me about yourself. Again, there'll be a link to this video upstairs. We go through this question in great detail and again give you a free handout just because it comes up so often, so we thought that would be the easiest thing to do. Just remember, when you're doing a personal introduction, first of all, don't get annoyed. Sometimes I'll speak to people and they go like, oh, I don't really understand why, you know, they're asking me to tell me about themselves. Can't they even bother to write my CV? Read it. And it's just like, dude, get over yourself. Number 1, you're not the only thing that they had to do today. Number 2, you might just be something that they've had to fit in amongst 100 other things that they've got to do. All I can do is speak from my own experience, particularly when interviewing candidates at companies that I've run. I really don't know what's going on. I've just got in previous years, I've just come from a meeting, I've just come from wherever I've been. I'll literally just sit there, arrive on time, and my first question is always going to be, tell me about yourself. Mainly because as you're telling me about yourself, I'm kind of catching up and reading it on your CV. Well, that might not be the case, it might be via video, but just remember that personal introductions are a really good thing to nail down. It's one of the first things that we do with our premium clients. Learning to sell yourself is such an effective skill to start off with, and it leads on to everything else. So be sure to check out our personal introduction or tell me about yourself video to learn more about how to break that one down. Question 5, tell me about how you deal with team conflict. Now, conflict has come up quite a lot for us. I seem to think recently, over a couple of companies that we've dealt with, conflicts are inevitable. Conflicts are not something to be afraid of. I find a lot of young people are afraid of conflict. Either it's just kind of like they'll just sort of go mental and get very upset, or I wouldn't say start shouting, but you can see they can get very anxious and maybe raise their voice, or because they consider it to be a personal attack, or they'll just melt. They'll just become really quiet, become quite submissive, and they'll just go like, oh, it's not really that important. Ultimately, the crux of a conflict is, what are we trying to achieve? If at all possible, though of course it depends on the audience, we're trying to set aside our ego about whether I think that I'm right or wrong, and that linkage to my self-worth. What we're really trying to say is, look, what's the issue at hand? What does the data say? What are the opinions of others? Can we ask for help? Can we come to a compromise? It's not about being right or wrong. It's just about saying, what is the source of this conflict? Is it important? And of course, sometimes not every battle needs to be fought. I mean, look, if someone disagrees about the type of sauce to have in a burger, I don't care, right? It's all about, the reasonableness and the time spent on resolving a particular conflict to do something. But it's just a good thing to break down and to think about. And also, I always think conflict comes down to, number one, generally just a mismatch of communication, and number two, what are we trying to achieve with this? What is it? It's in line of completing a project, a deadline, a target, or a goal. Question 6, what can you tell me about Accenture? Now, one thing I would say is, for me, Accenture is one of my favourite big company websites. It's a beautiful website. They use technology so intelligently. I think this kind of goes up there with Deloitte and PwC, who really put technology into everything that they do. They always are doing something kind of cool and new with their site, and you can tell that they've got a team that's just working on it all the time. I highly recommend that you understand how Accenture is using technology with clients and read their case studies. I cannot stress that enough. Accenture are really, really hot on people who are understanding what is the cutting edge of technology, of digital transformations, of the application in technology in terms of new service offerings. What can you tell me about Accenture as an extension onwards from, why do you want to work for Accenture, which we already talked about, is really just read the news and read about what Accenture is doing from their own mouth. The case studies are beautiful, they're really well put together, they're really thoughtful and really quite well explained, because they're obviously, all of them are sort of like sales pitches for new clients and people who might be interested in working with Accenture. So I definitely recommend that you do that. Question 7, describe your experience leading a team. Accenture, just like any other big company, are looking for leaders. They're looking for people who are going to be able to continue on, to follow through, and really you can have an incredibly lucrative career over at Accenture. Some managers and directors will be on low 6-figure salaries, and that will continue on as you sort of move through the structure. In such a large organisation, and Accenture is always, their services are always under high demand. I've got a lot of friends and clients who work at Accenture all the way up to director level, and they enjoy that work immensely. But it is fast paced, it is hard work, and you kind of have to sacrifice a lot of time for the company in order for them to deliver the results that they do to the caliber of clients that they have. So picking out this example, it could be anything. It could be a school project, it could be volunteering, it could be something to do at work, just anything where you kind of have been able to lay out a plan, allocate resources, set a goal, and take that plan, team and resources through to completion to do that goal. Question 8, how do you handle a challenge? This is a great one. You're going to come across lots of challenges at Accenture. I would trust that you would pick something that is quite difficult rather than just like, oh, I couldn't find the right socks this morning. Oh, it's a little bit late to get to school. Like, come on, dude. Like something where, you know, maybe you failed something. Maybe you had to do something in a short period of time. Maybe you put together a project and it was wrong and you had to change that at the last minute. Think about somewhere where you've really been challenged, and I tend to find a good indicator of this is where you felt uncomfortable. Well, actually, maybe it went through your mind like, can we do this? I'm not sure if this is going to be okay. Like, actually, I feel like I'm being pushed a little bit further than I want to be. That is a good example of a challenge. That kind of internal, like, where you feel like you're being pushed a little bit outside of your comfort zone. Question 9, tell me about a time when you dealt with a difficult client and how you did it. Now, clients come in all shapes and sizes. I've dealt with hundreds of clients over the years. I have to say, I've been quite lucky in that I would say over 95% have been absolute peaches. Really, really sweet, really lovely people, mainly because they needed my help. And I always delivered, above and beyond what they were expecting, so I had a certain reputation, so that was all cool. I mean, when you get a difficult client, it is a tremendous pain in the bee. Just somebody who's quite demanding, generally somebody who doesn't really listen, who has a very set series of expectations, who probably maybe thinks they're a little bit smarter than you, or a bit better than you, a bit faster than you. It's all really quite tedious because I liken it to me taking my car to see a car mechanic and then standing there and telling him how to fix the car. I mean, it's tedious for the mechanic, even though he knows that he's going to get paid by me. And really, it's just really stupid of me because I should just be leaving him to get on and do his job, because that's what you trust a professional for. So when you're thinking about this, just even if, I can think about times working in a fast food shop where I've had to deal with a difficult customer, or somebody had a refund, just try and think of a professional context where you found something difficult, or maybe just dealing with a difficult person in a group that you were working in. Question 10, where do you see yourself 5 years down the line? This is an easy one. Here, manager, running a team. Always that. So we spoke about this recently in another company which escapes my mind. Don't try and say, oh, maybe I'd be here, or maybe I'd be over here, or oh, I probably would have left. Or ultimately the company wants to know that they're going to spend 5 figures on your training at least. So they want to know that even before you join that you want to stay. You're already signalling that you want to leave, then they're probably not going to let you come in at all. Question 11, do you have experience working with international teams? Now, international students watching this will definitely be at an advantage because they will, be able to say that they can speak multiple languages, have been to different countries, and have applied themselves academically and perhaps professionally. Why does Accenture ask this? Because they've got a big team in India, they've got a big team in the Philippines, in the United States. Roughly half of their 250,000 staff are distributed across those 3 countries. So you need to get used to time zones. This is certainly something that I've become used to because I work on time zones anywhere from China to California, which is roughly about 8 hours either way. So you have to learn to be quite flexible. You have to learn as well also how to manage your own time, how to manage your calendar, how to kind of save yourself from burnout as well. So guys, I hope you've enjoyed this video about Accenture as much as we've enjoyed putting it together for you. I've really been looking forward to putting this together. I really wanted to get that detail down and get you prepared. If you have enjoyed this video, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, drop us down in a comment, even if it's a thumbs up or a thank you, or just let us know what video you'd like us to do next. Bye.